So welcome to TechKnowCon. This is our Tech Leader Spotlight series, and today we have Fabienne from SSENSE, and I'm looking forward to passing it on to him. But before we get started, just really quickly, for those of you who are new, and I see a few people who are new to the group today. So TechKnowCon started back in 2018. We ran this as an annual conference, initially at LinkedIn. So Rajan actually is online from back then from LinkedIn, and so Rajan, Jenny, Blackburn from Salesforce, and myself, we started it. And then the following year, we did the Twitter, and then the pandemic hit. And so since then, we've been running it online, so via Zoom, pretty much monthly. And we have a couple of different offerings. We have a roundtable, which is basically where somebody from one of the companies tells a story of something that they're proud of accomplishing with respect to technical knowledge sharing, technical enablement, etc. And we have quite a few of those, 50 plus counting. And then we recently introduced the Tech Enablement series, where we go through specific topics such as onboarding or mentorship and coaching last week, or we talked about technical documentation, etc. And through by focusing on the topic, we have a panel discussion. So multiple companies are present and talk about how they deal with the specific topic. And more recently, we started Tech Leader series, where we celebrate a story of a specific leader. So that's what you're joining today. So that's a little bit about TechKnowCon. So behind the scenes, there's a board, and I saw a few people here. So I know Rajan is here, Jasmine from Netflix is here, and I think I saw Chris Schaefer as well from Microsoft. So that's the people that kind of help steer what we do, and we usually discuss what kind of topics we offer, what are the challenges, concerns, and with that, who to invite to present. So that's what happens behind the scenes. Of course, Tomomi does all the heavyweight lifting, so you probably got multiple notifications, invitations from Tomomi, and she runs the community as well. So we have some lightweight guidelines. Essentially, all it says is be a good citizen. This is a community by us, for us. So we want to create a safe space. So there's a number of things that are more or less common knowledge. If you have any specific questions, this is also published on the website at techknowcon.io. All right, as I mentioned, this is a relatively new series. We invite VPs of engineering, and we like to hear from their point of view. I'll walk down the memory lane, how they dealt with certain issues, how they overcame them, what they learned from that, and how they envision the future. So that's what we're going to be doing today. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use chat. So I'll be looking forward to your questions in chat. You can send it to everyone. I'll be monitoring the chat window. If you have any technical issues, ping Tomomi. She's there to help you out with resolving any of that, but we usually don't run into anything major. So with that, I'd like to introduce Fabienne from SSENSE. Hey, Fabienne, how goes?
Hey, good morning, Marco. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. So Fabienne and I have a privilege to work with Fabienne a few years back. I want to say, was it 2017 or 2018, something like that?
Yeah, exactly, 2017.
2017. I remember I spent a couple of very cold Montreal winters up at SSENSE, up in Montreal office, and had a chance to sort of see the journey since it started. So I'm super excited to hear more. But before we get started, Fabienne, do you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and also about SSENSE for those of you who haven't shopped there yet?
I hope a lot of people have shopped at SSENSE, but yeah, let's get started. First, Marcos, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to be here today and speaking to the audience here. So my name is Fabien. I'm the VP of Technology at SSENSE. I joined SSENSE in 2017, and my role today as VP of Technology is that I oversee what we call product delivery teams. So teams that deliver features, basically. For product engineering and UX. And that's kind of a blend that maybe we'll start talking at some point today. So I joined in 2017 in a very different role as a consultant. And before SSENSE, I actually spent 10 years in consulting in France and in Canada and in the US, kind of a split between technology consulting. And then I also did 4 years really in more management consulting in the retail space. And you know, when I had a chance to meet Rami Atala, who's the CEO of SSENSE at the end of 2016, I thought that was like kind of the perfect blend of what I've been doing on technology and my passion for retail that I've been working on in the past 4 years, and then I chose to join SSENSE to move to e-commerce basically.
Got it. And can you, for those of you who haven't been to SSENSE.com, I'm doing a little plug for you. Can you describe the company?
Yeah,
what does SSENSE do? Yeah,
of course. So SSENSE is an e-commerce website. It's been founded 19 years ago by Rami Atala, and SSENSE was actually his master's thesis. So quite successful thesis, going from school to now being like a $1 billion in revenue company. We sell luxury clothing as well as streetwear, kind of side to side, and that's one of the unique feat, I would say, of SSENSE and what we're known for. There was a New York Times article back in December that said that SSENSE was, I think, a tastemaker in fashion. So a great endorsement from the New York Times. So we see ourselves as one, obviously, a technology company with a really good and scalable e-commerce platform, but also a cultural protagonist. So if you browse SSENSE.com, you'll actually land on an editorial page, and we invest a lot in the content, in bringing designers to be more known across the world, what's their point of view. So we're really like blending e-com and that aspect of being a cultural protagonist. Just in terms of size, to help understand, so I said, about $1 billion in revenue. We're privately held, so I cannot give like exact numbers. We have like 100 million of page views a month. The tech team is close to 300 people now, from 40 when I joined. And we have about like 4,000 new products that we list every week. So we have 26 studio sets, because we do all our photographs and then list those 4,000 products a week. We sell across the world. Main market is North America, but we have a fair share in Asia as well, and in Europe. And we got a minority investment from Sequoia Capital last year.
Very cool. Hey, did you say 1 billion with a B?
Billion, CAD, Canadian dollars.
Got it. Wow,
that's with a B, yes.
that is super awesome. I usually describe SSENSE as a website where you would go and purchase your $800 t-shirt. And that was definitely true back when you and I met. There was very little content. It was mostly an e-tailer, and it was mostly just web, I believe. There was no mobile play at the time. It's quite a successful Canadian startup story. I believe it was started by a couple of brothers, right? And
three brothers.
Yeah, and they started right in a very like bootstrapped operation. So it's pretty remarkable. So if we go back down the memory lane, can you describe SSENSE circa 2017 when you joined? What did it look like? What was the organizationally, technologically, culturally? What did the company look like back then?
So when I joined in 2017, first I joined as a consultant myself. So I was the idea was that I would like improve the performance of various departments at SSENSE. But the first one was engineering, and I loved it and chose to stay until now. And when I came in, SSENSE was going through a major rewrite of its system from a monolith to microservices, but it didn't go very well. And we were what I would call like it was the time of being project-led. So there was no product team, and it was one project after the next, driven mostly by the business directly with the engineering team. So the nice thing is your business teams love the direct interaction with developers. The not so great thing is there's a lot of challenges with like being project led. For example, there's a lot of like stop and go projects, a little bit like flavor of the month, like the business think something, let's do it, and then you realize, well, we maybe didn't spend enough time thinking it through, and we stop and move to something else, and so the value you deliver is diminished by that. And more importantly, I think that the main challenges where your project led is it's someone else's problem. So the code quality is not great because you're on a project and you know you're going to move to something else after. And so you don't have a great incentive to like maintain your code base, have like good code, good comments that would help people. And you also have limited accountability, is what I observed. Where again, it's going to be someone else's problem, so you don't invest as much in making sure there's like proper monitoring, alerting, and so on. So that was, I think, my kind of observation when I started as that internal consultant for engineering, and then very quickly I got the opportunity to move to be a senior director of engineering and implement changes to make it better, basically.
And I also remember one of the challenges was also the team. And the team size back then, it was much smaller, right? It was about, I want to say 40 developers.
Yeah, we were like between 40 and 50 people. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And I'd also remember the challenge of even just with getting people onto the new tech stack, right? Like going from a monolith to a microservice. There was a technological change. There was also retraining existing people. You also had this challenge of like how the organization was designed. So what was a big unlock? Was there like a specific unlock that you stumbled upon, or was it a series of things that you changed to kind of transcend the organization at that stage?
Yeah, right. So it's a series of things, and I think the unlock is our CEO being visionary and saying, something's not right. We haven't delivered value in 2016 as a tech team because we spent basically the full year in a rewrite. And for me, that's definitely not the right approach, embarking like a massive rewrite instead of being more incremental, because the business continues to exist and have needs, right? So you cannot like go in a room, put all your devs for a year, don't deliver any business value and say like, it's going to come, right? We're doing a rewrite. It doesn't work like this. We have to continue to serve the business, and time to market is super important. So there was a realization that, okay, that we cannot continue like this, and we need to move to a product-based organization because there's a lot of benefit that I'm happy to describe here. And so there was that realization, yes, let's stop the sole focus on rewrite. And let's move to microservices still, but it's going to be a journey of like many years, and we're still in that journey actually. We have hundreds of microservices now, but there are still portions that are on the historical monoliths and that are doing fine, and through time we will move them, but no rush. We need to make sure there's business value when we do that. So the unlock, to answer your question, was kind of failure to do that, and the CEO saying, look, we need to move to product-based organization. There's going to be a lot of benefits here.
Got it. So you de-emphasize the rewrite, the massive rewrite that was not producing any business value incrementally, and instead you chose to focus on redesigning the organization, right? To make it to go from a project to a product-based organization. So what did that look like? What was that journey? What did you specifically do to
so that was a super interesting time. I was actually partnering with, at that time, the VP product. So back in the days, it was different roles, right? There was engineering and product separate. And so SSENSE hired a VP product to build that product-based organization. And so it was like a time of like rapid changes where, we hired like 10 PMs from Amazon and so on, actually, where we had a good network, and brought them on board. We set up, okay, what's the product vision? What does it mean to be a product-based organization? What's our values? What are our tenets? What's our intake process? There's a lot of things around organization and processes. On the organization is, what are the domains that we need? You organize your team into squads, serving the business. So, how do you group those to be meaningful, and how do you work with engineering? So that was from, I would say, mid 2017 to mid 2019. So kind of a 2-year journey on scaling up the product team while also putting everything around the processes that are required to function between product and engineering. The other thing that was really important is, as I say, we came from a year and a half of not delivering much, so we had to reestablish credibility. And so I worked with the VP product at that time to make sure our roadmap was a blend of still technical things, like we continued a bit the rewrite, but not full right, again, like very specific, targeted, strategic in what we were rewriting, and delivering value that the business needed on a short-term basis, I would say. So to give you a few examples, we were opening a store, our flagship store in Montreal at that time, and we launched an app at the same time for the sales associates in the store, where people would book an appointment online and then have our inventory delivered to the store so they can try in like all the fitting rooms that we had. So we developed that app at that time. We launched the mobile app as well, iOS, with a lot of like really cool feature. Got really great reviews. I think 200,000 downloads in 2 months. So huge success. So we reestablished back the credibility of technology during that time.
Got it. So you kind of focused on delivering value, immediate value, as you were also embarking on this like organizational change from project to product, right? Correct. And it sounds like it wasn't like any specific big unlocks. It was just a combination of things that you were doing to kind of make that change and do it over time.
Yeah, and I think what the product-based organization give is we were like really focused on creating value, and sometimes that value is through like a technical component. Sometimes it's through like doing something scrappy, but we need to be the first on the market. And the product-based organization is really good for that because you are very rigorous in how you analyze the opportunity, how you prioritize the efforts of the engineering team. So that's where I really partnered with our VP of product at that time to make sure, yes, we have the squads, we have like the right people to deliver this. To give you an example of the roadmap between like short-term value creation, like the app for the store and so on. And then the flip side, we did continue on some of the rewrite. So for example, what we moved to microservices was everything, or some of the services starting for the front end, so the website basically. And in a matter of like 4 or 5 months, we were able to deliver like a new microservice architecture but just for that scope, we saw like massive drops in response time on the website, and then massive increase in conversion actually from a pure technical product. So that's where that blend I think worked really well at that time.
Got it. And as you were sort of making this shift from project to product, how did your personal journey change?
So that's where I went from being more a consultant to actually owning and leading the team, right? So consultant was easy, and that was my first few months at SSENSE, where I did a lot of interviews, understood what was not working so well, made some recommendations, but then I was not implementing anything. And some recommendations were in the process of being implemented, some not necessarily. And at that time, actually, the manager of the team, of the engineering team, left SSENSE, and the CEO was like, well, why don't you like take over the leadership role here with the team and go and implement your recommendation? And obviously, that's a complete shift for me, right? Of being like an individual contributor, actually, to having like 40 people and realizing, well, there's also no management structure here. It's like 40 people reporting to me, that doesn't make sense. So that's also the time where I had to like build a team, bringing a senior director that was like very, very technical, like a senior technical director, then bringing some managers on and organizing a little bit the pyramid to manage the team.
And I remember you and I were brainstorming quite a bit on like those processes at the time, like what does that look like? How do you create even the engineering ladder for people, what's the right structure for the team, etc. So, so you're now at this stage where you own essentially the team, and you're starting to put some structure in place and also scale it. So what worked? What didn't work? What were some lessons from those early days of like just kind of hopping on the hockey stick?
Yeah, and you actually touched upon something I didn't cover, but in parallel to setting up the product organization, we have to like also cater for the engineering needs, right? So that's where we also you and I actually partnered and worked on launching as what we call SSENSE University, powered by Plus Plus actually, and it was not only the tool, but you helped me have that culture of grassroots training from other devs to the rest of the dev community at SSENSE. We worked on the career ladder as well, because back in the days after tech lead, there were like no progression, and so people like, okay, what's next for me? Like, I'm like 7-10 years in my career, and there's no further role for me, I would say. So as we scale, it became important to define, okay, now we have staff developers, senior staff, principal, and give people an understanding that you can progress on an IC track as well as a management track. And so we have kind of a parallel, like that dual track where our principal are same level and band and so on, you name it, of directors, for example, or senior directors.
Right, and you scaled the organization in terms of headcount quite a bit since, right? So in terms of like any lessons learned in what worked, like what the design principles that you put in place for the organization, did that just work, or were there some things that kind of like you had to backtrack and fix along the way?
So yeah, so we, at that time we scaled a lot of the product organization, engineering a little bit, but I would say the really like scaling portion started more like mid 2019, and we're still in it today. And yes, it did require to change a little bit how we were structured into domains and how we work with the business. So one of the things I did not mention is, before we scaled, we couldn't serve the entire business. So there was a lot of gaps in the organization of, we don't work a lot with our customer service team, as an example, or we don't work with our studio team, but they have a lot of needs in terms of process efficiency and so on that technology could answer. And that was a conscious choice at the beginning, because we couldn't do like everything at once, right? So we said, look, there will be business areas that we don't cover initially. And in the scaling phase, that's where we started to look at the kind of heat map of the various departments. Where are the needs? Where do we need to invest? And that's where then we started to staff and scale. Like, okay, we're going to have a team that help our studio. We're going to build a team to help our customer service team. And that's also at the time where, starting in 2019, where we merge UX engineering and products. And so that was, I think, the major change when we started to scale. So that got consolidated under me. And I think it helped a lot, because what we saw in that phase of mid 2017 to mid 2019 was we established the product-led organization, a lot of success, but there was also a lot of debate between engineering and product. And how do you prioritize technical work, and how do you work more on features? Nobody was optimizing for the same thing. There was no really like shared metrics. And kind of the tiebreaker then become the CEO, right? If you have, VP of product, VP of engineering, then you have to go to the CEO, and it's like very detailed questions that I don't think the CEO would necessarily spend like constantly time on like deciding on those items. And so that's where we went down one level, and then at my level, at the VP level, we said, okay, then I'm going to own product, UX, and engineering, and I will be the tiebreaker when my like director of engineering comes and says, look, we really need to tackle technical debt here. It's going to put us in a really bad spot if we don't, in terms of performance, for example. And I have my product director coming, look, we really need to launch that feature to be first on the market. So that was like a major change that happened as we scaled. Was one, consolidation, to better coverage of business areas. And along with that, what we saw was on the process side, we actually saw processes diverge a little bit because we were like, so focused on like bringing in people and delivering features and so on that we didn't pay too much attention on processes. And so then you end up having like the prioritization process that's really core to what we do to be a little bit different if you were like working on the website than if you were working in our operations domain or if you're working with Studio. So that was, I think, probably a lesson learned is like, let's not that happen because it's we're going back now to fix that. And that's where I think tech enablement plays a big role as well. So we introduced like a product ops role that's going to help us like standardize the practices across the various product teams that we have, as an example.
Got it. And we'll get back to that. I'm super curious about that. But I just wanted to kind of touch on your personal journey here as well, right? So you went from a senior director of apps development, and you started now owning the entire product organization, right? So what you call UX, so design, product, and engineering all together, right? And working directly with the CEO. And how did you make your choices with respect? It sounds like it's a juggling act of like what gets built first, right? How did you prioritize features versus tech debt, etc., to make sure that you're delivering value and also moving the ball forward with technology as well, right? Technical stack.
Yeah, it's the $1 million question, right? That's what's hard, and that's why we have a product team to do that, and we hire like super smart people because I don't think there's a definitive framework. It's very circumstance based. It depends on where you are in your growth. The answer is actually different as well, depending on the maturity of your domain. So yeah, there's no, I think, really framework for that. But I would say there's like principles that are easy. Okay, let's look at the value that you deliver, and usually on features, it's usually quite clear. You launch that feature, you expect like conversion rate to go up, or you expect your cost per unit in your warehouse to go down. That's usually easy. The harder part is on technical debt, but you have to make the effort to try to size that as well in terms of what impact it's going to have. And some are easier than others. Say, okay, I'm going to invest in like rewriting my catalog on the website, and response time will drop by 500 milliseconds, and we know when response time drop by 500 milliseconds, then conversion go up by X%. In some areas, it's maybe a little bit harder. So there's also some kind of override, I would say, of okay, if it really creates a technical risk, and we've proven it through load testing, for example, then that's where maybe there's a disagreement between director of engineering and director of product. But I'm here then to say, look, for the sustainability of our technology platform, we're going to prioritize stability this time around, and we're going to push that feature out.
Got it. Cool. And so, and on this journey, as you're kind of like scaling up the team, can you speak a little bit about people? I remember at the time you were very much Montreal focused. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we wanted to accomplish was build the recruiting brand, right? So help SSENSE be known as the great place to work in Montreal. So that you can recruit people easier. So what was the team like? Was that still the strategy back then? How has that changed over time?
Yeah. So it was at that time until recently, until I would say mid 2021, the strategy was to hire mostly locally. And because we had an office as well, like move people to Montreal if we were hiring externally. But so everybody was on site until the pandemic hit. We're all remote now and will continue to be. But mostly, like I would say, kind of local talent. Everybody hired, so we were not using a lot of contractors. And we were hiring, I would say, generalists. And we made a major change recently on that strategy. So happy to talk about it also. It's like the latest phase where we changed that now. I'm happy to like explain a little bit why we changed here.
Yeah, please. So how has hiring generalists changed recently? I guess.
So during that period, we also realized was, unfortunately, we scaled, there was also a certain level of attrition. And what we pin it down to was because of people being generalist, there's a lot of energy that's lost in discovery on things that people with expertise would have found much faster. Especially, it's not true for all domains, but some domains do require deep expertise, I would say, both on the product side and on the engineering side. So if I take our operations domain, we had a lot of like really strong PM, but they didn't know really operations. And we thought, you know, they would kind of ramp up and learn on the job, which is the case, but it takes a long time. And it's sometimes incompatible with the speed at which we were evolving. And so it creates a frustration from the PM who's not in a position to succeed really. There's like high expectation that he or she cannot meet because of the lack of expertise. The operations business team is frustrated because they have to like do a lot of the work on requirements instead of the product team doing it. And the engineering team is frustrated because there's a lot of uncertainty on, you know, requirements as you get more detail, and then that uncertainty you know, is not what engineers like in general. So what we did under, we have a CTO now at SSENSE, Phil Thompson, so under his leadership as well, we agreed to move to an expertise-based hiring. And it comes with trade-off, right? It's harder, it takes time. So we had like unfilled position for much longer than we would hope for, but we've seen a dramatic change as well. So we've hired, you know, senior director of operations with 15, 20 years of experience in operations, and it makes a whole difference because we know where we need to go. The person has like seen it, done it, and then we don't make as many mistakes, I would say, or explore, you know, wrong paths. So we narrow down solutions faster and deliver more value. And to do that, we started to recruit internationally, or more internationally than we did in the past. And we moved to like being fully remote following the pandemic. So it helps. So we have people now in the US as well. And the last thing we did in terms of people was to have like a 15% of our workforce being contractors. And that helped, you know, absorb like a new product that would come in, or find expertise again that's really hard to get, and where you just have a temporary need. So you don't need to hire someone indefinitely, but to say, okay, I have, you know, like a one-off, let's say SAP migration, and I'm gonna just hire a company that has done like 10 of these per month, and we're gonna have get their expertise. So we really changed the profile, I would say, of the people we hire, which put also more pressure on training the people we have, because we obviously want to retain the people we have, and we need to train them to bring up their expertise level as well.
Got it. And so when you're scaling up people so rapidly, one thing we sometimes see with companies at that stage is that they start experiencing organizational drag, meaning adding more headcount does not linearly make them that much more productive. As a matter of fact, it may bring the organization down to a halt because new people, it takes some time to onboard them, to get them on the same level of shared understanding with everyone else. So did you experience that? And if not, how did you solve for getting people up to speed quickly and kind of indoctrinate into the culture and the way you do stuff at SSENSE?
Yeah, so we did, and I think that's why we're like entering that new phase of expertise and then tech enablement that we're starting to invest more, because we did see kind of velocity a bit going down because processes diverge between teams. There's a lot of like coordination, dependency, certainly a lot of new people as well. So, you know, you have your core like 50, 60 people who've been here for some time, who know the system, and then they have to like train so many new hires, and it's ad hoc, and we don't have a great robust onboarding where like we would do a boot camp for 1 or 2 weeks, for example. You know, we don't have that. So it was painful in a way, and we did see velocity go down. The other thing that was that you have to realize is the rest of the business needs to scale at the same speed as you, and it not necessarily. because then you're moving faster than the rest, and you end up you cannot take like everything. And when you have like a bunch of initiatives, you always need like a business counterpart, right, to problem solve with the product managers. And so that's what we saw, is like some areas where we were moving faster than the business, and it creates frustration, right? Because we make decisions that's not always validated. Maybe the business we went faster, or we were like in a wait mode, which is also not what you want to do. So we did see what you described, Marco, with a bit of a drop in velocity as an overall more, because you added more people, but on a kind of per person basis, yeah, it's probably lower.
Got it. And so you keep mentioning tech enablement as sort of like what you're focused on now to kind of solve for that and enable you to scale well into the future. What does that mean to you? How do you envision your tech enablement organization?
So there's various factors for me. And maybe one that I'm not sure this is how people think about tech enablement, but the empowering the team with budget has been a huge unlock of tech enablement. And so let me explain here. In the past, I was like owning the budget, and the teams didn't necessarily have visibility on their budget. What I did and we started about like 6 months ago. It's a long process, is to give each domain visibility on their budget. And it changed completely the kind of discussions that you have with your business counterpart. So in the past, we were always seen as the people saying no to features because we have limited capacity. But what we've done here in that phase is to align our domains with one exco sponsor who is able to make decision when there's like disagreement, basically. So alignment with one exco sponsor per domain, and then giving visibility to the online domain. Hey, here's like, you have X million this year. And now the discussion changed with like, how can we make this happen? And what we saw is actually some of the departments transferred budget to technology because they saw, like sales, for example, said, well, I think if you invest, I need that like kind of feature. And if we invest here, I think my return on ad spend, my ROAS will grow by X, and it's going to be beneficial for SSENSE. And it's like, I understand, but we don't have the budget for this. We have to do like this, maintain this initiative is higher priority, and we can't. And so then sales turn around and say, well, I believe fully in that initiative. So here's like $1 million, and go and deliver this. So it changed completely the discussions with our business counterparts. And I think it really empowered the team, and in that sense, enabled them to be more autonomous, go faster, and really have a sense of purpose that they may not have felt as much in the past, where that wasn't as clear. So that's the one portion of the journey that's on tech enablement that is maybe a little bit unusual compared to the common definition, I would say, of tech enablement. So that's one. Now we are obviously, sorry, go ahead, Marco.
No, I was going to say that's super interesting, going from that centralized decision making to decentralized, right? And you do that like literally by allocating dollars to teams and creating a little sort of like arbitrage marketplace where people can trade budget for prioritization of internal priorities, right?
Exactly. What comes with it, though, is a lot more like we need to provide a lot more visibility on where people spend their time, because we did receive budget from other departments, and so yes, we have to deliver that feature. So I think the sense of accountability also is growing up in the teams. Like they understand they do have to deliver this and do whatever it takes to deliver. And so that's where also we were starting to say, well, we like expertise here, so let's bring maybe a consultant and speed up the project, for example. So that's changed a lot recently. We need more tooling to do that, so it's very manual right now. Working with FP&A to get the actuals, doing some forecasting and so on, but it's all manual Google Sheet driven. And I think the next step will be to make sure we have more tooling around this.
Can you maybe speak to that a little bit, to touch on the technology? So I know your journey started from monolith to a long but steady conversion to microservices. And now you're getting to this point where like you're optimizing for efficiency and you're talking about tooling. So how do you reason about, and that totally makes sense. I wonder, how do you reason about that, specifically build versus buy, right? I know at Twitter, pre-IPO, we would like build everything in-house, and then we're like, oh shit, like we should have just bought it off the shelf. We would have done better, right? So how are you reasoning about build versus buy around tooling specifically?
Sounds exactly like SSENSE actually. So historically, we've been a build shop. Like we built everything. I think it comes, and it's a great culture, and that's why we see ourselves as a tech company. You know, comes from the CEO initially like building SSENSE from scratch, like everything, right? The website, the order management system, the warehouse management system, everything. And so we were like in that culture for a long time. And I think we probably didn't question ourselves enough until recently. And so we ended up building a lot of things that are available on the market, you know, that are more feature rich. And so yes, we built it, but you know, sometimes our business counterparts are not happy because there's not many features, and we have like a team of 5 to continue and expand the product. So it's probably 2 years away until they have what they would really need to be, you know, efficient and performing. And so yeah, there was, I think, a kind of aha moment of like, okay, let's not be so dogmatic about building everything. We're continuing to be a build shop, but there are areas where, you know, the processes are mature. It's not a differentiator. The solution is not super expensive. So yeah, let's just buy it and integrate. We're going to save time and invest that time to maybe spend that time to like invest in areas where we're going to differentiate ourselves. So we changed that from, I would say, like 18 years of build, and now mostly build, but maybe like a 20%, 25% buy on off-the-shelf packages.
Got it. And so if I kind of zoom out to that 18-year period, right? Like, so you have this what appears as an e-tailer type of a company, and now we're talking about software build tools and building that in-house. So how do you think about SSENSE? Is that an e-tailer? Is that a technology company? Is it tech-enabled, like e-commerce? Like, how do you reason about the company itself?
I personally see SSENSE as a tech company, because I think a lot of the value we have is in our platform, and we don't use like a Shopify or something. Like we do think that we will differentiate through technology. So I do see SSENSE as a technology company, and one example of that is, you know, in addition to like all the products we have, some of them are considered hype products, where we have like a massive amount of traffic coming at once when we list the product. So, you know, brands like Essentials, or back in the days, the Yeezy shoes, and you really see, you look at the chart and it's, you know, like your regular average, and then suddenly it's like 20x in like 2 minutes. And so our stability has become really, I think, a differentiating factor versus some of our competitors that may have the same product and then are either down or have like a queue that they put in place to manage the traffic. And you know, we've been able, knock on wood, it's hard, it's like constant learning and so on, that we've been able to invest a lot in technology to make sure we're stable in those kind of events. And I think it is a differentiator. So I do see us as using technology to win on the market.
Got it. And through all this, how has your personal journey shaped up, and where do you see yourself going next? Like, and how do you see your own personal transformation from a consultant to the head of, you know, app development to VP to like, what's next? Where are you leading this transformation?
So, it's a difficult question because there's different options, right? But what I mentioned about expertise is also true for me. It's true at all levels. And I think where I'm thinking is like, I went through like expanding my scope and having product engineering, UX for everything. I also had like data, DevOps, and so on. And now we're starting to say, look, I think where I bring a lot more value is one on the online domain, so everything website, the app, and then on structuring and scaling the team. Okay, so a kind of dual role. But then we're going to hire, we have hired actually a VP for data who will take, you know, everything on data engineering, data science, all the reporting, the BI functions, because I don't have that expertise. And then on platform, we have a senior technical director who's taking that. So even for me, it's like, you know, eating your own dog food. Like, well, I'm pushing for expertise internally, and that applies to me as well. And so for that's the, I think for me, the next step is shrinking a little bit my functional scope, I would say, while keeping everything around the, you know, building the team and scaling and the tech enablement as well, like to then remain that transversal.
Got it. Yeah.
Now, if you think 5 or 10 years in the future, then maybe the reverse will happen, where I hope that someday to be, you know, like a CTO, for example, or a chief product officer, where then that goes, so it goes, you know, it went like this, then like this, and then maybe we'll grow again.
Got it. I mean, it's been just amazing just to watch your own personal growth as you've been sort of experiencing this rocket ship that SSENSE has been over the last 5 years. So kudos to you. It's been really inspiring. Ton
of learning through that journey. And the funny thing is, I was like elected VP, or I'm not sure about the word in English, nominated, I guess, or promoted VP February 2020, and a month later COVID hit, and suddenly you're faced with like so many difficult decisions and completely unknown, right? So it's been quite a journey to have that. And the other piece I didn't mention in the past is, in addition to my role as a VP of technology, I'm actually part of the executive team. And so I'm basically exposed to all the functions in the business with the 3 co-founders and like a few other C-level. And so on the personal front, you know, that journey has been like super interesting, because in addition to technology, I've gained like visibility and understanding on, okay, how operations work, how sales work, how buying work with then the relationship with the brand and so on. So super interesting growth journey with SSENSE for me.
Sounds like you've been learning a lot. Nobody said it was going to be easy, but it's going to be fun, right?
Definitely not easy, but I love it.
Awesome. That's all the questions I had. I wanted to pick up a couple of questions from the audience. So Ron Lichty asked about Conway's law. So basically, in essence, and pun intended, as you change the org structure, the product structure tends to change as well, and vice versa. So as you were kind of shifting from monolith to microservices, did you also shift the team structures, and did you see the impact of that on technology and so on?
Yeah, so I mean, that's a great Conway's law is like spot on, I think. So we have to be careful with that, because as you guys probably know, like the law said, your systems will reflect your org structure, and to a certain extent, it does. Like we have services are like built super micro, when they could, like the bounded context could be a bit larger if you structure the team differently. So one of the things we do, or we try to do, is you know, what's called the reverse Conway maneuver, where you start with your system architecture first. It's like, okay, what architecture do I want? And then from there, you say, okay, what is the org design that's going to allow me to get to that architecture? So you know, we try to do that. It's not always possible. You also want to align with your exco sponsors and so on. But that's something that I read at some point. I was like, well, that's really smart. So it's actually I think it's my office book. Yeah, great book.
Cool.
If you want to, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So if you want to learn more about the reverse Conway maneuver, so we're trying that to a certain extent, but for sure you do see pockets of, yeah, the system was built as per the org design, and we have to live with it.
Cool, got it. Any other questions from the audience? how do you think about leadership's role in shaping the culture from Sasha?
You play a central role as a leader of the team in shaping the culture, right? Who do you hire? So when we move to like expertise base as well, that has an impact on the culture. And so how do you accompany the people in that transition, not your new hires, but your people there? Some of the things I push was, and I've been pushing for since I joined, is around accountability and rigor. And so I do think, as you know, as leaders, in my position, I do have a lot of influence on the culture, and I take that kind of role really, really seriously. One of the things I did was to make sure we have a small grassroots committee around culture that kind of meet regularly to say, okay, you know, we have a bit of an undocumented culture, I would say, like, okay, that's just the culture, but okay, let's try to put on paper what is it. And then when we onboard people, say, okay, let's try to explain what our culture is and how. I think the most challenging is how the tech culture fit in SSENSE culture, but that's maybe for another talk as well.
Cool. Well, maybe we'll schedule for that other talk at some point. Jasmine says, do you feel you were able to do a good job of managing expectations when budgets were allocated to technology from other internal teams, and naming the biggest offender being the scope creep from your end? How do you manage that, basically?
Yeah, it's really hard, and you have to be accountable. And I think it does require to normalize a little bit the relationship. So it's a challenge with Agile as well. We have to agree on a scope beforehand, and that if things change too drastically, it's like, okay, you know, that's kind of a change order, and discuss that with the stakeholders, saying, look, you know, when you gave the budget, it was pre-discovery. Now we've done discovery, and you know, it's more complex than we thought. And so let's look at the overall budget of the domains. Do you still want to do that, or do you want to take back your budget, or do you want to deprioritize something lower to continue even if it's like 20% or 50% more expensive? So there is definitely a challenge here, and the discovery happens usually after you've gotten the budget. So yeah, some difficult decisions or discussions, sorry, that need to happen here.
Got it. And I'll just take one more questions from Sasha. It's about the Great Resignation. How do you retain your top talent? You mentioned that you had some attrition at the beginning of pandemic, and it seems like you've kind of transcended that. How do you think about the Great Resignation?
Yeah, not yet transcended. It's difficult, I think, for everyone on that call. I'm sure everybody struggle here. The main challenge I find is, in the past, when we're in the office, there was really a lot of personal relationships that kind of disappeared. And I see that now, you know, today, a lot of the measures have been lifted, but we're continuing to be remote, and people don't necessarily see each other. Like, we have a budget for team dinner and so on, and people in the same city don't even organize that anymore. So I think that it's so easy to jump ship then if you don't have those relationships. So I don't have a good solve for that. I'm like trying to influence, again, the culture myself, like booking some team events with my direct reports, trying to fly in people whenever we can to meet in person. That's one. The second, I think, is creating a sense of purpose. And that alignment that we're getting with, you know, ex-co-sponsor and the business, I think is super important, because suddenly you have our business counterparts like showing up to demo, asking questions, and being very involved. And I think for the devs and the PMs, it's like super gratifying to see the impact they have. So that's something in terms of culture, that I'm really, really, really pushing on really having business and tech working together to create that sense of purpose.
Cool. Well, thank you, Fabienne. I'm super grateful that you shared with us your story here, and quite a success. And yeah, you should be totally proud of all that. If there are any other questions, feel free to ask them via Slack. If you haven't joined, I just shared that. And So that was Fabienne that basically transformed SSENSE from an e-tailer to a tech-enabled technology company. Next month, or actually this month, we also have, speaking of culture, we have HubSpot, another awesome company when it comes to culture. And so HubSpot is going to be sharing how they think about tech manager's role in attracting, developing, and retaining talent. And the next month we'll hear from Uber. So that's coming up. Stay tuned, and great to see everyone. Thank you all. Thank you, Fabienne.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marco, for having me. It was a pleasure.
You have great times. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.